This month's Where Did the Road Go is brought to you by three wonderful people, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, and 36 Dingo. It is also made possible by all of my Patreons, and if you want to become a patron, www.wheredidtheroadgo.com.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And tonight I have Super Inframan.
Hello, hello.
And the one and only Red Pill Junkie.
Buenas noches.
So all you people saying, where's Red Pill Junkie? He's right here.
Yeah, just being returned by the benevolent alien overlords.
Are those the same aliens that are making you create a tarot deck?
Yeah, they are very, very demanding editors, Seriah.
Your tarot cards look beautiful.
Oh, thank you. God, I hope so. I mean,
Oh, they look great. They look great. And I'm glad you're back. I noticed a couple of other different folks mentioning that they hadn't heard from you a while, too, from some of the other people that do podcasts and things. And I was like, man, like, obviously we love you, but I'm like, people really miss Red Pill's voice, you know?
well, thank you to all the people who have missed me. I mean, yeah, I decided to give myself some kind of break, not only because of the tarot deck work, which demands a lot of attention, and it really drains me physically, even, emotionally, but also because of personal reasons that I decided to seek a bit of solitude to process some things that needed some processing. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's had a really rough time the last couple of years. It almost feels like every single one of us is suffering from some kind of like PTSD.
Yeah.
I was talking to Vanessa Waliko. You know her, Seriah?
I think so.
Vanessa she's a wonderful artist, and she has a podcast, Pants Personals, I think is the name. And I was talking to her about how, everybody's dealing with all these problems, like the kind of things that we thought that only happens in apocalyptic Hollywood movies. But at the same time, we never had in those movies like the kind of a scenario like, the giant robot is destroying the city, but your boss still wants you to report to work tomorrow at 9 a.m. sharp.
This is true.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I guess, my advice to you guys, hang in there. Everybody's going through their own personal existential problem, but like the saying goes, if you're going through hell, just keep going.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just recorded a podcast with Taylor. I know Octavian was a part of it. I haven't listened to it, so I don't know who else is on it. But that's exactly what it was, is like telling stories about how you got through rough times. So if people are, it may be helpful for people who are going through crap right now. So check out the Green Lion podcast, because it's the only episode he's put out for a while. He's only going to do them occasionally.
I'll have to check that out, too. I haven't got to listen to the Green Lion in a little bit.
Oh, he hasn't done anything in a little bit.
Oh, that's fair, too.
But yeah, he just wanted stories of like, what did you do when things got rough? How did you get through it, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, you do get through it. That's the key, is to keep going.
Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight, I'm not sure exactly where this is going to go. So we're going to start with Well, first of all, I want to start with this story that you told us, Super Inframan, about these footprints that I don't remember you ever telling me before. It doesn't mean you didn't, but it doesn't even sound familiar.
Okay, you know what? I think I probably just told it to Tim, just through Instant Messenger or something like that at some point. And I may have shared it on my Instagram at some point as well, but it's my only, I guess, brush with something like a Sasquatch or something like that, and very much not a flesh and blood perspective on this. When I was between 10 and 12, I can't quite remember, but wintertime, it had snowed, and my mom and dad and I lived in very deep in the country, lots of timber around us, lots of deer trails for miles and miles and miles. And my dad was a incredibly experienced outdoorsman, and my mom also too. And we were out going through some of the trails, just kind of like looking at the snow and all these things, seeing what we could see out there. And we were probably about, I don't know, maybe a mile, maybe a mile and a half at most from our house. But, this is deep in the woods at that point. And there was a clear patch, and my mom noticed these tracks going ahead that probably went on for about 20 yards. And, one of those things where she's like, what are these? And calls my dad over, and I'm looking at them too. And so we follow the tracks for a while, trying to figure out what they are. And these things are, probably, I'm holding my hands in the air in front of me, trying to guess how much the distance is. But, I would say a good 20 inches, 18 to 20 inches long.
Mm.
And after about 20 yards, they go opposite directions. And, it's just weird. It was weird. And, I was talking before the show, if I had not been around my parents all day because, we were stuck inside because of the weather, I would have thought that they were like kind of playing a joke on me or something, because it just didn't make sense to me that, suddenly the right foot went to the right and the left foot went exactly 180 degrees in the other direction. And then, of course, they both just disappeared, stopped. But, my brain at the time was like, this reminds me of the cartoons where, Bugs Bunny's under the snow going towards a tree and his ears split and go around the tree and come back together.
Right.
Yeah. Because I'm like this. And so for the longest time after that, I thought it was fake, but I couldn't figure out how it was, because it was so far away from anybody else that could have done it. And, my parents could have identified the tracks if it was something that we knew was local to the area. But my mom still talks about it. And as I've gotten older, going back and revisiting that memory and that experience, I'm like, oh, this sounds like some of the stranger experiences of a not corporal Sasquatch character or something like that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is I bought my mom Josh and Tim's books because it was so appropriate to that story. And I mean, it instantly made sense to her. She was like, well, yeah, this is just like, in line with those footprints we saw when you were a kid during the snow, and she still talks about that story.
Too bad you didn't have a cell phone to take pictures with.
No, unfortunately, this is probably 1990,
yeah,
1992. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We might have taken some, I don't think we did take photos of that. If we did, they're long gone. I don't remember us going back out there, though. But, yeah, I mean, totally bizarre. We lived quite a ways off the highway, way out of the city, deep in the woods. I mean, for somebody to have even tried to fake that, they would have had to make a lot of effort to get ahead of us. And the area where we lived literally is thousands of acres around of forest.
Right.
So somebody didn't ride a four-wheeler out there and predict that we were going to walk to that one specific place and, stage some random footprints
and then remove their tracks.
Yeah, then remove their tracks, made sure there were no like ATV tracks or anything like that. So it was really odd. And I think my mom, of course, is she grew up in logging country and things like that. It's almost like she skipped a generation. So stories about the haint, things like that, ghosts, whatever, were very, in her wheelhouse.
Right.
Whereas my dad was just not exposed to those things. So I was always kind of curious to watch them talk about it because, she had a lot of value in things that we didn't understand. And then, for him, he just put it out of his mind because it didn't make sense, but it must have a logical explanation, right?
Does your mom have other experiences?
So she does. The one that's probably the biggest, Seriah, my mom got hit by a car in the mid-'70s.
Wow.
Oh. And she had a near-death experience.
Okay.
And so I look back and I kind of wonder how that may have set me on the road to end up where we all know each other.
Yeah.
Because we grew up with that as something that she talked about. But it was a drunk driver, went over a hill really fast, hit her in the side and threw her quite a ways. And, this is back in the mid-'70s when women wore hair rollers in their hair, to do their hair to make it curly and all those things.
Yeah.
So she was actually out walking with her hair rollers. And that's probably what protected her because it was like she had on a helmet.
Yeah.
Goofy as that sounds. But they had to rebuild her legs essentially. So she had rods in her legs. She still has one of them left. But so she had quite a long time in the hospital after this.
Did she actually die or did she just have the near-death experience?
So she didn't actually die, but she had the near-death experience, and it was very, very straightforward, what we would call, typical at this point. But she saw herself in the operating room, when they were trying to stabilize her and take care of everything, saw what the doctors were doing and everything, floated up further, saw the light at the end of the tunnel. And I never could get much detail out of her about the person or whatever it was she encountered, but it was a silhouette with the light behind them and told her she had to go back. That she wasn't finished doing stuff and she needed to go back. And
then the figure said, "You can't enter to heaven looking like that."
Yeah, right.
What's the matter with you, lady? Get your hair done.
Yeah. But and that was it. Was you've got to go back, and then the next thing she's coming out of anesthesia. So, but it was interesting to have that influence on her growing up in the South, particularly too, where we were in the Bible Belt. And also my mom kind of having skipped a generation where I have cousins that are older than my mother. She came along very late. So like my oldest aunt was more like my grandmother than my actual grandmother was because she passed away so long ago. So folk tales and all those things were just alive in our family. And it was, set me up to be far more open-minded when we were going to the Baptist church down the road and things like that. Yeah. But I think that would probably be what I would characterize the biggest one. She and I will get into long conversations about this when I'm at home visiting with her. And I've shared on the show before. In fact, it was the three of us where she would talk about like my grandfather seeing the fireball come down from the sky when he was out fishing and the beautiful lady stepping out of it. But there's no part of the story after that, whatever that was, it's been forgotten. But he thought it was an angel stepping out of the fireball. And of course now it's like, that sure does sound like a tall white or whatever we might call it.
Right. Huh.
I would rather call it an angel.
He called it an angel.
know?
I mean, he thought it was an angel.
I mean, thinking that calling it a tall white and spacecraft is a better description, I feel that it's kind of like a cultural mistake.
No, you're right, and it probably does a disservice to like how he was trying to relate the experience, because the detail that was really interesting to that too is he said he heard music all around as she was coming out. Right. But it's one of those things where that was his lens for it. Now he might have explained it that way, as more of like a UFO alien entity, but we don't know what it was. But we have the point of reference of people describing similar things. Yeah, so interesting stuff. I actually really want to sit down with my mom sometime in the next year and just record these stories.
I was going to say, yeah.
Because she's getting older now, and some of the details are starting to disappear and things like that. And I think it would be good to have those. She would tell me a story, and I'll tell this one quickly, because I want Red Pill to talk about some of his stuff too, and I don't want to bogart our time.
You're fine.
But okay. I told you about, we grew up in logging country, or she grew up in logging country. And this is, early to mid 1900s from a lot of these stories come from. But her uncle would load up his wagon and put goods in there. And I believe he was hauling cotton at the time and take it to market. And he had a mule that would pull the cart. And he would sit on it, with his those two long leather reins, to control the mule.
Right.
And there was a shortcut to get back to where he lived. He's going through the woods and all these old country areas and things. But nobody liked to go through there at night because supposedly there was a thing called the haint that lived there. And he decided that night he was tired and he was going to ride through where the haint was. And, so he gets the mule going really fast because he's like, I'm going to cut through here. This thing, whatever it is, isn't going to bother me. And he hit something such that it scared the mule. He ended up using some kind of quick release thing to let the mule get off because the mule was panicking, lifted his wagon up off of whatever it was he hit, pulled it forward, took off as much as he could, got the mule, put it back on there, and then took off again to get out of there safely. Probably hit a stump. But, he thought he had hit the haint.
Right.
Yeah. The other family story I really like that all my aunts tell, my grandfather and my two uncles would walk back from the sawmill every night. And they walked past an old church. And every time they would go past the church, there would be a guy sitting on the roof of the church. And which is odd enough as it is. But there was a buddy of theirs that had decided to play a prank on them. So earlier in the evening, he got a ladder, climbed up on the church, and sat up there. And was waiting for my grandfather and my uncles to come by. And my grandfather and uncles, as the evening gets on, come walking up. And my grandfather goes, "Oh, look, there's two of them up there tonight." And I forget the name of the prankster, but he looked to his side and there was somebody on the roof of the church with him. And it scared him so much he fell off. The other person that was up there disappeared. And, they helped him, and that was the end of that. But, the old South, the old poor South, is fascinating to me because I'm sure you could probably find a lot of stories like this in Appalachia or something. But
well, that's kind of what Steve Stockton did, is collect those type of stories from that area.
Yeah, yeah.
From the Smoky Mountains and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting how it was such a take it in stride kind of thing. Like it was just taken for granted that weird stuff happens. They blame things a lot on what they called the Wampus cat, which was not like a cougar or anything like that, but it was something that they would go hunt periodically, and they would hear it screaming at night, which does sound like a cougar.
Yeah.
But they had their own concept of it. And my grandfather had a Wampus cat foot, supposedly he kept as a good luck charm, but it was probably something else. You know, I think the Wampus cat, if it existed, was something more paranormal than flesh and blood.
Right.
You know, those are things that just, they're very fascinating to dig into some of that, because it has a very pedestrian reaction for most people. We're like, oh, there's two of them up there tonight. Not like, oh my gosh, you know, just, yeah, like, this is just part of walking home every night. Yeah, there's that ghost on top of the steeple there, or on top of the roof. You know, we just walk past it and act like it's normal.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to mention, that all these stories that you're sharing with us, they all have that kind of like pranksy quality to them.
Uh-huh.
And also the idea of how people reacted to them. You know, even, I mean, your mom and you and your father finding those footprints, and the fact that, you know, they kept discussing that over the years. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's something that, you know, they will laugh about it, or they will just say, "Oh, you remember that?" One of those things. But the fact that it wasn't something traumatic,
right?
It wasn't something that terrorized them or that seemed to inflict any sort of trauma,
right?
I guess it goes to show, you know, how the culture can definitely influence the way that we react to this sort of phenomena. I mean, with Native Americans, there is this idea of also taking for granted these sort of things, this sort of you know, encounters with Bigfoot or strange lights seen in the forest. Like, it's something like, yeah, they accept that they happen, but at the same time, they don't do an effort to have these experiences. You know, they don't go chase after Bigfoot. In fact, they try to avoid it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I think among some Native American cultures, it is considered a bad omen or bad luck to see something like the Bigfoot. Whereas, obviously, with our Western mentality, the idea of, we go hunt for Bigfoot, go chase down this hominid creature, as it is considered by most cryptozoologists. But I wonder what would have happened if someone, you know, like a city folk like me, would have encountered those footprints. Right. Maybe would have scared the dickens out of me, or maybe if I had seen also that other person on the roof, that also would have, you know, caused me to have a big fright. Right. So yeah, that to me is the thing that's interesting, because especially the anecdote of the footprints is so absurd. Yeah, the fact you equated with a cartoon, like one of those old Warner Brothers or Tex Avery cartoons, in which the animators, they knew that everything goes. You know, you can break all the rules, including physics, in order to push the gag as much as you could, so to get the most reaction out of the public. In the case of that is to, you know, to have a laugh. But in the case of these footprints, what was the ultimate goal? I don't know. If it is just at least for the anecdote to remain part of your family tradition. I mean, it's something that obviously you will probably tell your kids and your grandkids years and decades to come, and now it is being shared at a larger audience thanks to the magic of podcasting.
Right. Yeah.
But it's fascinating.
I think my favorite part of it is exactly what you're talking about, because it was just such an accepted part of of life, for them growing up with my mom and my aunts and my uncles, growing up kind of like deep in, parts of the country that weren't very developed back then still. And they just were like, yeah, like there were two of those guys up there tonight. Yeah, it was funny,
Mm-hmm.
It makes it interesting. And, the story with the footprints, like my mom and I still talk about that, just about any holiday when I'm home for a little bit of time, like inevitably she'll mention that story. And back when, everybody was a bit younger, in the South, when you have holidays, you'd probably do one where like all of your, aunts and uncles would get together and things like that. They would bring these stories up and tell them, now we're just, everybody's older and spread apart and in nursing homes and things. But that was just kind of like the family folklore that were fun stories to tell. And sometimes they were to laugh about, and sometimes they were, more of like just being curious than anything else, or being intrigued by it. Like probably even them being intrigued at how accepting they were of that when they were younger. And now like, man, that actually does sound pretty strange,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think you should do an entire recording with your mom, and we should air it on the show.
I'll see what I can do. She has a lot of stories to tell.
You could even do it as a video.
That could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing we were talking about, it was a question you had for Red Pill based on one of Red Pill's tweets. Well, so not so much of a question, as much as a comment, I guess.
Yeah, in Red Pill, I think if you just want to launch into it, I don't think I need to set the stage for it, because you did a much better job of explaining than I did bringing it up to you.
All right. Well, and obviously I don't know when Seriah is going to release this one, but something that happened this week, actually,
we're recording
yesterday.
We're recording this on June 23rd.
All right. So what happened on June 22nd or 21st is that George Knapp, that the reporter that is famous for promoting the Bob Lazar controversial UFO story, and also for bringing attention to the Skinwalker Ranch in the 1990s, he released a new special report on his the TV station he works on, KLAS TV on Las Vegas, with regards to the UAP task force that was created after Lou Elizondo abandoned ATIP in 2017, and after apparently there was like someone else taking over ATIP, and because of all the hoopla and the uproar that story caused, there were people in Congress that took attention to that and decided to, instead of doing the opposite that the White House and the Congress do, which is to sweep this UFO subject under the rug, this time, like we can say, it was differently, and they decided to take matters into action. And there was this law that enacted the creation of a new UAP task force that was going to create a report for Congress that was released last year. I think it was in June or July, if memory serves.
It was June.
Yeah, it was June. That's correct.
Okay, so coming almost to a year since the idea that this task force released this report, which consisted in two parts. One was classified part of the report, and the unclassified, in which they kind of like made an assessment of all the information they could gather about all these UFO encounters that have happened among military personnel, especially the Navy, the Tic Tac and the gimbal, and all the things that you guys probably know ad nauseum by now. And yeah, I think in the report there was the idea of like 144 cases that were investigated in the short time the UAP task force had to look into these matters, and they found like, or maybe I'm misremembering, but something to the effect of 143 or something of those cases were still considered to be unknown, of an unknown cause, if memory serves. Anyway, to make a long story short, George Knapp suddenly disclosed that Travis Taylor, a scientist that has gained a lot of popularity recently because of his involvement with several reality TV shows on the History Channel, including The Secret of Skinwalker Ranch and other shows. I think at one time I saw him in some kind of like show about Nikola Tesla, in which they tried to recreate one of his famous experiments, the idea of trying to like transmit electricity to some light bulbs that were put on the ground, and they actually managed to do it, which was kind of cool. But anyway, this guy, it's now known that he was the lead scientist for the government's UAP task force, something that apparently not even Brandon Fugel or all the people he's been working on at Skinwalker Ranch in Utah were privy to, because, I mean, obviously the guy had to sign some non-disclosure, secret agreements with the government. So yeah, that's the thing that's been in everybody's mind recently, and everybody's talking about it, and everybody has a different opinion about it. There's a lot of people who think this is a very bad thing, that it puts into question this guy's credibility. I mean, they say, how could this guy, who is taking some kind of like personal or financial interest in promoting the mysterious or paranormal aspect of UFOs on a regular basis for these TV shows, how could he objectively assess the quality of the evidence that he was presented to during his term at the UAP task force? They see a big conflict of interest, and they accuse him of being unethical, whereas other people who defend him and say, no, the fact that he never mentioned this to his friends at the Skinwalker Ranch talk about the guy's integrity, and his ability to keep a secret, and to keep his various interests compartmentalized, and they keep reminding people that this guy is a real scientist. He has, I think he has 2 PhDs actually, which is pretty impressive. And he's done work for NASA. He's written several scientific papers. I think he's even written textbooks that are being used, to teach classes at a college level or something to that effect, which, goes to show that the guy is he's not a, what do you call this, a make-believe scientist.
Right.
Like, he's the real deal. So, getting back to my tweet, what I was trying to give an opinion of is that I don't question Travis Taylor's scientific credentials, nor his committed to science. But the fact that he was appointed to be at the head of, the scientific effort for this UAP task force, and he's also involved with all this thing with the Skinwalker Ranch, which everything is tied back to Robert Bigelow. If you go back long enough, it goes to show just how small and interconnected. Well, I guess I used the word incestuous because I couldn't think of a better term for it, but it goes to show you just how small of this, I don't know what to call this, boys club or something, of all the people who have a direct influence in the modern public opinion of UFOs. And I don't know how I feel about it. I guess it's something that should concern us all, not because these guys may have some kind of secret agenda, as they are being now currently being accused of. Everybody think of Robert Bigelow as almost like a Bond villain.
Yeah.
with a secret lair and a bald cat sitting on a leather chair and saying, my plan is going as expected, of duping the whole world into believing in UFOs and werewolves at the Skinwalker Ranch. I don't think that's the case, but at the same time, it's kind of disturbing that whenever it comes to UFOs and the government's involvement to try to understand them, all the same people have been involved in that from, this almost like the 70s to the present day. Hal Puthoff and Robert Bigelow and Kit Green and Rick Doty. And now Travis Taylor, who is, I don't want to say he's connected to Bigelow directly, but I remember that some of the people who were involved in the BASS study that was launched by the OSA program in 2008, I mean, they kind of picked him up because of his involvement with the Skinwalker Ranch TV show, which is nuts. It's almost like the whole world has become one ginormous reality TV show.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Without commercial breaks.
Yeah. My spidey sense on this is kind of twofold because, and this is nothing negative on Travis by any means, but sometimes when the kind of work people produce, you go to those people because it's going to be the answer that you want without having to influence it.
Yeah.
So, you make the right recommendations, influence somebody to make the right choice and who you want to write the report. And even without manipulating things, you end up with the answers that you want out there. And that's something that happens in a lot of parts of the world. That's just kind of like how we tailor statistics by changing the question a little bit to get the answers we want. And so that's something that when you put that tweet up, it bothered me because I was like, I thought you raised a good point of having other voices involved that have not always been a part of this to bring that fresh perspective. And also when you keep tapping the same groups of folks, particularly with that reality TV show aspect, there's not room for the narrative to really change on anything. It can, and I don't want to say that or give the impression that I'm questioning the integrity of the guy that wrote the report. I'm sure it was genuine, but just that, you want diversity in the eyes that look at, I don't want to call this a problem, but the challenges of understanding what's going on here with UAPs and whatever else we're seeing in the skies.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Travis Taylor is someone who wants to come come out to the public as being a scientist who was very skeptic about UFOs and all that until his involvement with the Skinwalker Ranch research, and that's when he says that he started to. I think one of his quotes is, "I've seen more UFOs than I can count," which is okay, and it's difficult to react to that. Is it because now that you are in a place, in a specific place where there's a lot of UFO activity, or is it maybe because now that you have changed your stance with regards to the UFO phenomenon, suddenly you find yourself noticing things that probably you didn't notice before? Maybe it's like synchronicities, right? Once you start paying attention to synchronicities, there comes a point in which you almost feel like everything that happens in your life is a synchronicity. That's when you kind of like need to reel back and say, well, no, just because I've now checked at my clock and it's 11:11 doesn't mean that it's a special message from the universe. But I mean, it's hard not to say that it brings to question how objective he was when he evaluated the UAP task force evidence as it was presented to him. And it's obvious that George Knapp, I have nothing against George, but obviously Jeremy Corbell is his protege, right? And I do have something against Jeremy Corbell. I think he's a guy who has, tried to manipulate the UFO phenomenon in ways that I do not approve of, like for personal aggrandization, and
certainly.
personal, promotion. Weaponize your curiosity and all that. Jesus. Anyway, obviously, Jeremy Corbell, when the Congress hearings on UFOs that happened last month occurred, there was a big winner and a big loser. The big winner was Mick West, because all these people who appeared before Congress, they showed a couple of videos, and one of them was this video that was leaked to Jeremy Corbell and that he promoted to God knows how many TV shows around the world, not just in the United States, as claiming that it was one of the best evidence of UFOs that the government had collected, and that it showed what he claimed were pyramid objects that were swarming over a U.S. Navy vessel in 2019, I think. And Mick West, the famous skeptic who has tried to debunk all these videos, he said, no, I mean, those are not really pyramids. Those are just the result or the effect of the lens of the camera that creates something that is well known in photography and in the special effects industry. I think his name is bokeh. And in the case of an infrared camera, yes, it totally shows triangular reflections that were misinterpreted by Corbell, saying, oh, yeah, those are flying pyramids. And in the hearings, one of those people who testified before Congress said, that is the conclusion that we arrived at. Those are just regular drones that were flown over the ship. But the reason that it looks like triangles or pyramids is because of the camera. So that was a huge black eye on Corbell, and I really thought that he wouldn't be able to recover from that. But obviously, I mean, this is ufology, everybody are like vampires, no matter how many stakes you thrust into their hearts, they keep rising from their coffins.
It's the same as politics and professional wrestling. People have short memories.
They do.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, George Knapp is obviously that is using this new revelation about Travis Taylor to defend Corbell, because Taylor is saying that when the UAP task force analyzed that video, they concluded that they weren't drones.
Right.
You know, for some reason. I don't know what kind of like rationale or methodology they employed in order to reach that conclusion. But it's weird, you know. I mean, I don't know how anybody could say that that video in particular is anything anomalous. But at the same time, there's this guy, Travis Taylor, you know, scientist with impressive credentials, saying, no, we analyzed it and we concluded that it's they are true anomalous objects. So what gives? It's really confusing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's because I think there is a predetermined thing they're pushing.
Yeah.
Possibly.
For whatever reason, you know, I mean, who knows what the bigger plan on all this is? I don't know. It's just
I don't know. I mean,
to me, it's just junk. I don't even pay attention to it.
I try not to, but I mean, it's like ever since Elizondo and To the Stars crashed the UFO scene in 2017, it's kind of like the only game in town, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, forever, for better or for worse, and I think for worse, Elizondo and all these guys changed the course of ufology in the 21st century. And yeah, it really feels like there's some kind of like hidden agenda going on behind curtains. I don't know. Elizondo keeps coming with claims and things he says that are more and more outrageous.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if you want to get into what he said in his last interview with regards to the origin of the word national socialism. You know, I mean, I think
I don't even know what he said.
Oh God. Well, to make, and I'm sure people will say, no, that's not what he said, or that's not what he meant. But he kind of tried to make some kind of like political statement about, you know, left and right politics by saying that to say that Nazis were right wing may not be accurate, because in the world of the party, it was the German National Socialist Party, and we know that socialist means, you know, left-wing politics. So were they really right-wing or left-wing, according to him, which to me is a very stupid thing to say.
Yes.
Because, yeah, maybe at one point the National Socialist Party, which was one of the small labor parties that existed in Bavaria, in Germany, back in the 1920s, that was kind of like co-opted and hijacked by Hitler and his minions. And yeah, they probably at one point they wanted to promote themselves as being, you know, people who wanted to fight for the rights of, you know, workers in Germany. But we all know what happened then, you know, after they rose into power. They went and chased down and put in prison all the communists, you know, and they were totally anti-communism. I mean, yes, the Nazis struck a deal with Stalin in Russia at one point because they saw some kind of like a strategic benefit in not confronting Stalin, but at one point they totally double-crossed him, and they invaded Russia in the end. So to say, or to someone to try to whitewash National Socialism and try to play those kind of like right-wing tactics of saying, well, you know, we really don't know who were the bad guys here, or whether they were, left wings or right wings. It's kind of like the modern thing that is happening of saying, people saying, you are the fascist. No, you are the fascist.
Right.
That.
Right.
And Elizondo is obviously playing with that to his benefit, because, he's making his intentions clear that he wants to run for Congress. And the more and more I see it, he obviously wants to use not only the UFO platform, but also a kind of like right-wing platform that has been becoming more and more prevalent in the United States since the rise of Trump and Trumpism in 2016.
But so was this part of him talking about UFOs and then this came up?
Not really. It was. I listened to half of the interview. It was like half an hour, and he made an appearance on some podcast. I think the name of the podcast is Veterans for UAP Discussion or something to that effect. So these are guys who are obviously interested in UFOs, but they also happen to be American veterans. And I guess they asked Elizondo a favor, and Elizondo acquiesced because he had said that he didn't want to do any more interviews, that he was kind of like retired. He was disgusted from the scene, but he did make this one exception.
Okay.
And he said that, and it's just one of the things that he's saying, that they're so kind of like outrageous, and he's also accused all the people who have criticized him or who question his credentials. He almost says that all of them are being paid for by
course.
someone, like, I don't know, Stephen Greer or the government. He's kind of like saying that there are people in the Pentagon who are after him and who are trying to make him some kind of like a scapegoat. And that's why there's been all this controversy with regards to his involvement with the AT program. People questioning whether he was actually the director or not, how much of his involvement he was. And it's difficult to know what's what, because he says one thing and then he writes another thing. And there's this book about the skinwalkers in the Pentagon that was released last year, that was written by Colm Kelleher and George Knapp, and this other guy, James Lakatsky, who was the director of ATIP, or OSAP, actually, and who he was apparently the guy who hired Elizondo into the job in the first place, because, and this is something that is even part of Elizondo's internal government complaint against the people he claims they are like slandering his reputation. Apparently, Lakatsky told him that the OSA program needed someone who was an expert in counterintelligence to help them with their UFO program. So obviously, this guy, it begs the question, why does a UFO program need an expert in counterintelligence? At one point in that document, which was recently released on Dropbox, by the way, you can find it if you search it through Twitter. They say that they needed someone who will be able to fend possible infiltrations by foreign governments with regards to all these UAP incursions on sensitive American territories,
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm getting at, because obviously it is so confusing. It is a narrative that, as the years go by, it is becoming murkier and murkier. And if it is getting murkier, my gut tells me it is because there is a clear disinformation and counterintelligence purpose behind it. Maybe it's not the main purpose, but there's certainly counterintelligence overtones within all of this, and it really begs the question: Is Elizondo conducting some kind of like counterintelligence project using UFOs as a cover-up? You know, are UFO enthusiasts? You know, all the people who like to tweet about UFOs, UFO Twitter, are they being duped and exploited by Elizondo for some ulterior motive?
Probably.
Yeah, that's what I think. But obviously, maybe we will not find out until years and years later, and after Elizondo disappears from the map, if he disappears from the map, which is my suspicion, unless he actually goes and gets elected to Congress, representing Wyoming, as he claims he wants to do it in the years to come. I don't know, but it really is complicated.
The thing with him too is, he's doing talks and stuff where he's showing the wrong slides. He's showing slides of fake stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, that to me, okay. So who does something like that? If you're an expert, if you want to be taken seriously, you're not going to do that. So either he didn't really care, or it's he just doesn't. It's not the main. Like you're trying to see who's paying attention, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Or he just had someone do it, and he's like, "Yeah, I don't care. This isn't really the whole point of this anyway. So just put together whatever."
Yeah.
Yeah. No. I mean, there are obviously things that he says that if you do a fact check, you realize it's not true. Like you said, that slideshow that he gave in Italy, in which he showed this photograph. He claimed he was a real photograph that was taken during the big UFO wave over Washington, D.C. in 1952. And everybody with a cursory interest in UFOs knows that photo is actually fake. It's something that was taken not during the UFO wave, but it actually some kind of like reflection of lights taken from some kind of like a pool or lake that is in front of the Capitol building.
Right.
And other things that he said in one podcast, I think it's called Theories of Everything, with this guy, Kurt. I don't remember his last name, but in his first appearance on that podcast, and he's been there several times, he said some things to Kurt that were simply not true. Like they were starting to talk about angels, because Kurt is also interested in philosophy and religion and all that. And Elizondo told him that the word angel comes from the Greek angelios, that is derived from the word helios, which is the Greek name for the sun.
Right.
So kind of like saying, and angels are luminous or bright beings, and that's the reason why in antiquity they were called angels. And I'm no expert in Greek or Latin. I just had a cursory studies in etymology when I was in high school, but I know that's not true. Angel, yes, it's a Greek word, but it only means messenger. That's the in religion, in the Judeo-Christian religion, the idea of the angel is it's a messenger from God, someone
right.
who comes from the heavens, to impart some kind of like message to humanity in general, or maybe to someone in particular. Mm-hmm. But it's nothing to the effect of, oh yeah, these are luminous beings or whatever. Actually, if you go into the Bible, especially in the Old Testament, you can see that there are encounters with angels or angelic beings that are described almost as normal human beings.
Yep.
There's that famous story of Abraham greeting 3 strangers to his tent because he recognizes them as being. It's confusing. It's either the Lord and 2 of his companions, or 3, messengers from the Lord, and they tell him that they are on their way to Sodom to destroy the city of sin and corruption and all that. But yeah, I mean, Abraham greets these people, these 3 men. He invites them to his tent, and I think he even puts food, to them for them to eat. So I mean, this is not going to be a Bible school lesson, guys. Don't worry. But it's just to show that with Elizondo, there's a lot of things he says that are simply not factual.
Yeah.
The few things that we can actually corroborate, because there are the majority of the things he says we cannot corroborate, because he simply says, well, I can't talk into that, or I've seen these documents, or I've seen these things, but I cannot reveal that because I have to fulfill my non-disclosure agreements and my oaths to the government.
Right.
But
we cannot. Yeah.
If he's getting really simple things wrong, like that slideshow, why should we believe any of the stuff we can't verify when he can't even put up something simple that's correct?
Well, yeah, exactly. How reliable is his recollection of all these things that he says he saw that are classified, if he is so unreliable with the things that are not classified?
Exactly.
And again, if they're classified, he still wouldn't be able to talk about them. This goes back to so many of these things where people are like, oh, I saw this stuff that I can't talk about. Here's what it is.
Right.
It's like if you weren't allowed to talk about it, you wouldn't be talking about it, because you would either be actually silenced or, you would know better.
Yeah. Hey, this is an addition to this, and it's an aside at the same time. But have either of you seen the new Top Gun movie?
No.
No, I haven't, and I want to. Yeah.
I'm going to go check it out just because. But, and spoilers, so maybe cover your ears for people that are going in to watch it that aren't us. But they have a play on the Dark Star in the film with Lockheed emblems all over it and everything, as if it's a test project in Nevada. And that's part of some of the opening. But I was just fascinated. And if people are bored and want to look it up, you can go look up where some of the making of featurettes where they talk about this partnership to make it look like it's a real jet. And I thought it was so interesting that they got Lockheed to put their name on it and collaborate for something that may or may not have existed. But I'm like, it's almost like you're throwing fuel on the fire for that. So why are you doing this?
Well, it's deliberate. They always use that. I mean, even when the film's plot is science fiction, it's about, like Independence Day and and battle with alien invasions and whatnot.
Right.
And the U.S. government and the military has found that this kind of Hollywood movies are great propaganda machines for them, and they are very almost like free recruitment tools.
Yeah.
Right.
That in which there's going to be probably some 18-year-old kid who's going to see that movie and is going to see, I wanna fly a secret plane too, like Maverick, man. I mean, how many people were probably decided to get a career in the Air Force or the Navy because of the original Top Gun in the 1980s?
Absolutely.
Right. Absolutely.
And some of the movies are way more obvious propaganda than others.
Right. Yeah. I was curious though with the Dark Star being made into the film, because it's propaganda, but I tie it back to some of the UAP stuff too, where, you know, there's insinuation that this is secret government tech.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, so, you know, and I totally agree. Like the Top Gun movies, and there's so much stuff that's propaganda. And of course you have that, what's the office at the Pentagon that partners with films? That basically remember. But y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Anyway, where, you know, they go through the scripts and decide if they're going to help you or not, because it's got to portray them in a certain light, and they want in there. And
the way I understand it, each branch of the military have their own liaisons in Hollywood, you know, doing that, you know, checking scripts and helping as consultants to ensure that not only that the things that are portrayed in the film are as accurate as possible, but also that there are no things within the film that could, you know, be conflicted with the government's interests. Yeah, but one of the reasons why it's so famous, the story of the Air Force telling the guys who directed the film Independence Day in 1990, I want to say 1994.
Yes,
like they said, yeah, we want to help you out with this movie. We're really excited about it, but we need you to do us a favor. You cannot mention the existence of Area 51.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's so much, you know, they do stuff like that, but then they're also kind of the ones that seem to have leaked Area 51. I'm guessing after they moved to their actual secret stuff to another location.
Right, right.
Because then you pointed to the former location, you're like, ooh, look there, don't look anywhere else.
Yeah. To draw your attention away from other stuff.
Yeah.
Remember that movie, Broken Arrow, with John Travolta and what's the name? Christian Slater. Yeah. They also, you know, talk about a secret spy plane, and the idea of that they go and chase scare the cows, and also scare the farmers who probably, you know, think that they saw a UFO. There was all that inserted into the movie. Even the idea of these CIA consultants because they have one of these planes crashing, so they say, well, we need to come up with a cover story, and the guys say, no way, we actually need to tell the truth, because otherwise we're going to look silly, because we have all these amateur researchers, you know, and also popular mechanics reporters who know about this project, and they go and they look they go into the desert with their, you know, photo lenses and binoculars, so they will know that something crashed, and we if we come up with some kind of like BS story, we're just gonna look silly. So it was kind of like an interesting take of saying, oh yeah, the government, we try to cover our secrets, but if need be, we will tell the truth to the public.
And you never know which they're doing.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
because they mix it all together.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that happened during these recent hearings at the Congress, I don't know if you guys actually bothered to watch it. I did twice.
You watched it for us.
I watched it for you. And there were so many parts of it in which the people running, you know, the task force said, "Well, we will disclose this. We will disclose this to you behind closed doors." You know, like there was going to be a classified part of the hearings. Not one of those congressmen objected to that. You know, everybody said, "Yeah. We need to safeguard our secrets, you know, from the prying eyes or prying ears of America's enemies."
Mm-hmm.
But this idea of the thing that with these hearings, there was more the idea promoted by this exercise of these guys saying what we can't tell to the public is not because we're withholding the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. It's because we need to withhold procedures and capabilities that are very sensitive to to America's warfare machine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And UFOs have always been caught up in that type of thing, and always been caught up in these disinformation stuff. I mean, you don't see it so much in other paranormal fields like Bigfoot or ghosts or even, I mean, you get it a little, I guess, in psi research, but it doesn't seem like they really. I mean, they were hiding the fact that they were using remote viewing, but they weren't. It's not like with the UFO stuff. With the UFO stuff, it's very much used for political gain.
It is, and to your point about that, I always got the idea that it was always done to make you speculate that we were further along in our warfare methods, technology, than we might be or might not be. Kind of a bluff or something like that, to where like keeping everything shifting. Where we think, the I guess ability to wage war is, beyond what we can, beyond what we regularly see, I guess is what I'm trying to get at there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But with the psi stuff, yeah, it's it was never weaponized in that way of pushing propaganda of strength, the way, do they have crash flying saucers? Are they incorporating into their airplanes? All that kind of stuff. Or at the same time also saying, well, you're crazy for being interested in this stuff.
Right.
Yeah, it's also because the government, the preferred way to deal with paranormal stuff is to just don't pay attention to it. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, as long as it doesn't interfere with their activities, they just like let it be. I remember this article that Nick Redfern wrote years ago for Mysterious Universe, something about the people that were spying on Lady Diana Spencer back when she had left Prince Charles, and she was having an affair. So there were people from MI6 following her, and I mean spying her activities, and even having a car with even, I think if memory serves, maybe there was even a sniper or something just to like protect Lady D. Obviously totally unknown to her, but in this particular story, these spies, they detected that in the premises or from where Diana was meeting her lover, they detected one of those alien big cats that are so famous, that appear on Britain from time to time. Yeah, and I mean, they notice it with their infrared cameras and whatnot, but obviously, since that was not part of their mission, they just let the cat go by unharmed. They didn't shoot at it or something. They didn't try to like catch it, because that's not what they were there for. They were there just to keep an eye on Lady D, and I feel that's probably what happens on 99.9% of the time in which the UFO and the paranormal cross paths with the military. As long as it doesn't really interfere with military activities, they say, one of those things. It's like almost like your mom and you guys, Inframan, finding those tracks is like, okay, well, it's not really affecting us in any particular way. So let's let it be.
Yeah.
With UFOs.
Now they're paying attention to it because they are interfering with military activity, and they are getting more engaged with Navy vessels and invading restricted airspace. But obviously, it's probably that 90% of those incursions are the result of drone technology. There's nothing really out of this world out of it.
Although probably not in 1953.
That's true too. Yeah. So go ahead, Seriah.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, some of the stuff that is public knowledge that's out there, but necessarily hasn't been deployed yet, looks a lot like photos we've seen the last few years of, a big triangle with small triangles around it. And that's probably the replacement for the B-2 with basically using, drone aircraft that accompany it so they can all span out together and these kinds of things. And that's something that I forget who develops a B-2. I wish I remembered that right now. But they're fairly candid about doing
Northrop.
There we go. Northrop Grumman. Yeah. So, those things are out there. And but at the same time, that doesn't mean there's not weird stuff happening in the skies too.
Oh, yeah.
It's
just harder and harder to tell what the weird stuff is anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, people occasionally will tell me a story and I'll be like, okay, no, that's weird. But other times it's like, well, that sounds weird, but it also could have been something known.
Right. So, I've shared videos with y'all in the Slack of, drones flying 5 feet above the ground at 200 miles an hour. I came across a video earlier in the week, and it's a drone that's probably, I don't know, maybe 5 inches, 6 inches by 6 inches. And it's zipping around hay bales right as the sun is setting, and so it's very dusky out, and it's lit up bright green. And and if you couldn't hear the drone sound, it looks like, ball lightning or something. It's so creepy looking, and it's this guy's little drone, and those are the kind of things I'm like, it's going to be so hard to figure out what anomalous lights are now.
Yeah.
Because things like this.
And don't they have stuff as small as insects at this point?
I think so. I've seen drones, like things you could buy for kids for Christmas that are, basically, I don't know, about 2 inches across.
Yeah. So they obviously got smaller stuff if that's coming out for kids.
Right. Exactly.
And the other thing that I think people miss, look how actual whistleblowers are treated. Anyone in the last 20 years who's actually blown the whistle on something the government is doing, and they are persecuted as far as the government can. But yet, if you, quote, blow the whistle on UFOs, suddenly you're fine?
Yeah.
So either you're being used and, you think you're blowing the whistle and that's exactly what they want you to do, or you're just lying. Right.
Yeah.
The only person that I can think of that experienced any ramifications was, I'm trying to remember his name. He
Gary McKinnon.
Yes. He's the only one. And I wonder if that had more to do with what he got into.
Yes.
Hacking as opposed to what, he saw or thinks he saw or claims he saw.
Almost certainly. Because what he saw, he didn't have any proof for, and it didn't necessarily mean what he thought it meant.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it might have. I mean, there certainly could be a contingent of the military that is active in space that we're not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think it's more that he was able to hack the system that they were upset about.
Right. Yeah, but he's the only one. I mean.
All right, we're out of time.
And Julian Assange, obviously.
And who?
Yeah, Julia Assange, Edward Snowden. I mean,
yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Look at what they did to those guys.
Yeah, those guys had to flee the country, and they're in fear for their lives a lot of times.
Yeah. So, and it wasn't because of UFO stuff.
No, it was not.
No.
All right,
Ironically, ironically, Julian Assange and the WikiLeaks that happened during the Trump-Clinton campaign was the thing that blew the lid to the whole, ATIP and the New York Times article eventually.
I did not make that connection. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
All right. Well, we can continue talking in the Patreon segment. But thank you both for coming on. Red Pill, where can people find you?
In my house drawing. I'm still writing for the Daily Grail, sporadically, obviously. And I still have my webpage, which I have neglected tremendously during this year. I'll try to update it more frequently. absurdbydesign.com. And, well, obviously, my main goal still is to finish the ufology tarot deck by the end of the year, knocking on wood here. And once that's finished, I will go on hibernate for a few years to rest.
And then you'll do all the other cards for the deck.
Oh God, no! I don't want to. Yeah. I have to finish the major arcana.
All right, and Super Inframan can only be found if you put up the signal in the sky.
Exactly. Get your local Super Science Patrol team. They can help me.
Or sometimes on Discord or Instagram.
Yes.
All right, thank you both.
Thank you, Seriah.
Thank you.
I want to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons. Without you, this show wouldn't be possible. And I especially want to shout out to those pledging $10 or more. Allison Cook, Super Inframans, 36 Dingo, Chuck Shutters, Leanne Sherry, CJ, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, land of the crazy and communicable, Christopher Ernst, Craig Cicernos, Craig Parmenter, Crystal Ann Compton, Diane B., Duffy Dowder, Edu Camahort, Empty K, Eric Citron, Eric Todd, J. Otto Bullitt, James Lattimore, Joanna Rojas, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, MJ Armstrong, Jim and Sophie, Mark Bowley, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Stone Wilderness, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Vincent Treewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Stephen D., and Amber Hall. Thank you all so very, very much. All right, there's a Patreon segment with this that's probably as long as the show, where we talk about a whole bunch of other stuff. And I will see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.